Hey guys, how is it going? So I have been talking for a couple of weeks about that I was going to film a Q&A video. You guys submitted several questions to me. And so I finally have some time today to sit down and actually respond to some of these questions. So I'm going to get into that. If you're new here, my name is Amanda. I am a mom to 5 kids. Ooh, my lamp. Calm down. I am a mom to 5 kids ranging from the ages of 13 all the way down to 1 year old. I've been married to my husband for 15 years. We homeschool, all that type of stuff. Typically the content that I do on here is I do a lot to do with food, grocery hauls, what's for dinners. But here in 2023, I plan on starting to introduce more content like with homeschooling, day in the life type videos, bringing back what's for dinners, and I'm going to kind of change the way that I do that format. I really like the way that Jessica from Field's Whole House does hers, where she just shows what they're having for dinner, and I like that. So I think I'm going to do that. So with that being said, I also have an announcement to make in this video that I've been telling you guys that I needed to make, and it's a pretty decent sized announcement. So I've got several questions in here to answer. My email on my computer is just going nuts. So let's just get into the questions. Okay, so the first question that I got was, what state do we live in? We live in Illinois. There's not a lot of good to talk about in regards to Illinois, but we have really great homeschool laws. I was born and raised here before I left. I'm trying to get this glare off my glasses, but I just don't think I'm gonna be able to do it. I was born and raised here in central Illinois, more specifically. I was born and raised here until I was 18, and then I moved to live with Braxton, and that's, I mean, I'll touch on that in one of my other questions because somebody asked how Braxton and I met. So we currently live in central Illinois. We're about 2.5 hours south of Chicago. There's a lot of cornfields here. Another question that I had was, just to piggyback off of that, was how did Braxton and I meet? Braxton and I met February of 2008. We met on the internet before it was cool. It was weird when we did it. I was 18, Braxton was 20. I really wanted to like move on with my life. I really wanted to like get out of Dodge. The glare is just driving me nuts. I think that's gonna be fun. I think it's fine, but I don't know. Now the glare from the computer screen's driving me crazy. There, that's better. Okay, so I was 18 and I really just wanted to like get on with my life. I wanted to move. I wanted to get out of my hometown. I wanted to get away from all the people that I knew. I was just tired of it. And so I actually met Braxton on a dating website. We really hit it off from the very beginning. I actually messaged him. We talked on the phone for a couple of weeks, and mind you, we were not Christians when we met. And I was a very sassy, mouthy girl, and he said something to me and he called me a liar or something, and I just like, I tore him a new one about don't ever call me a liar, and he was just like, I just knew in that moment. Oh, I just don't think the lighting's good enough. But I don't know. Yeah, I'm just gonna keep the light on. I'm sorry. And so we talked for 2 weeks over the phone. And he drove, he was currently stationed in Kansas with the Army, and so he drove up 8 hours to meet me. We spent an entire weekend together. He drove back to Kansas, and then about 2 weeks later, I flew out to Kansas for like an Easter weekend for us to spend that together. And then about 3 weeks later, I moved to Kansas. So, I mean, we had a really whirlwind relationship. So I moved to Kansas. We lived in this tiny little 1-bedroom apartment. We had no idea about money. Like, we didn't know what we were doing. We got into a lot of really bad financial like situations because we were just stupid and ignorant. I fell pregnant with Emilynn really shortly after I moved to Kansas. Like 2 weeks after I moved to Kansas, I was pregnant with Emilynn. And this would have been like April of 2008. I was pregnant with Emilynn. We were gonna get married in June, because if you are unaware, in the military, it is a lot better for you to be married in the military financially, because you get a housing allowance. They have something that they take a certain allotment out of single soldiers' paychecks to help pay for the chow hall. You get that money back. Like, it just, we were really struggling financially. And so we made the decision that we wanted to get married. We were going to get married in May. And Braxton's unit actually called him, and they were like, you know, Combs, you're single. We're sending you to WLC, because he wasn't married. And he's like, well, I'm trying to go get married. And so he went to a warrior leader course for a month. And then when he came back, we actually went to the courthouse and got married in Junction City, Kansas, right outside Fort Riley. And that would have been June of 2009. And yeah, we went through several really hard years after that, mostly because we were both really selfish, self-centered, unsaved people. And we actually were at a point in 2014 that we were actually ready to just, shortly after Lucas was born, we were really just at our wits' end. And we both just wanted to move on with our lives, and we were actually contemplating getting a divorce. And then we both got saved, and the Lord restored our marriage. And that's where we are now. So that is how Braxton and I met. The next question was, do we have any plans for future babies? Lots of questions about babies. So like, do we have any plans for future babies? Are we going to have another baby because our babies are really cute? You know, just several questions about, are we going to have more kids? So some of you may not know that Braxton and I, actually in that season that I was just talking about, where we were ready to get a divorce, we were over it, like we were just so tired of fighting all the time, Braxton actually went and got a vasectomy. And in the time that the Lord restored our marriage, I became really convicted about getting the vasectomy done and wanting to reverse it, and not even knowing if that was like a thing that you could do. And then I did some research on the internet. I was really discouraged because, I mean, we were talking like $6,000 to $8,000 to reverse his vasectomy. He didn't want to, because he was like, I don't want to get another procedure done. Like, there's just no way. And so I just prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed that the Lord would change his heart, and that not even necessarily to have more children, but just to reverse that decision that we made out of obedience to understanding that we were trying to tie God's hands, so to speak, in regards to our fertility. And that even if the Lord had never given us more children, we would have been fine with that. But we wanted to move forward with just trusting the Lord with our family size. And so probably a couple of months after I brought it up to Braxton, I found a doctor actually in Oklahoma. His name's Dr. Wilson, and he actually does vasectomy reversals as a ministry. He does it for under $2,000, and it was the most affordable that I could find. And so we saved up for over a year to pay for the reversal. And so then we actually wound up, we took all 3 kids to Oklahoma. We went to the Pioneer Woman Mercantile because it was like an hour away, and like we had like a really fun day of it. And we went and we got Braxton's vasectomy reversed. And it was really great because, you know, they had like a really comfy waiting room with movies for the kids to watch and stuff like that. And so we then, at that time when we got the vasectomy reversed, we purposed that we wanted to trust the Lord with our family size. And walking that conviction out is not always easy, just because in our own wisdom or our own thoughts or our own, you know, whatever, we can doubt, you know, what we can handle and everything. You know, I've been in a season since we bought this house of feeling like I just have way too much on my plate. But Braxton and I are really committed to, we believe what God says about children. We believe that they are a blessing, that they're not a burden, that they're a heritage, that, you know, these are souls raised for eternity that get to go and influence future generations. And so we don't plan for future babies, so to speak. It's just us trusting and yielding and being obedient to the Lord. And if He wants to put children in my womb, then we're open and willing. We do not do like natural family planning. We do not do any form of birth control or anything like that. So that's about plans about babies. So one question was about birth stories. I feel like that would take a really, really long time. Emilynn was my longest birth at almost 18 hours, but I was really ignorant to my body and what my body needed to do for birth. I was at a really bad Army hospital. I just had a really just not good first experience. Chloe's birth was really quick. She was born, the doctor didn't even make it to the hospital. Like she was delivered by an intern. I was in labor with her for like 4 hours. Lucas, also a really quick birth. He was like, I think 5 hours. Caleb's birth was longer. It was over 12 hours, and that was because it was a very traumatic birth experience for me. Caleb has several health issues. It started with that he had kidney reflux in the womb. And they essentially made us feel like if we did not induce to have him, that like he was at risk of dying, and he wasn't. And it just, there was just a lot of fear tactics done with Caleb's birth. I wanted to have a natural birth with like no epidural at that time, but like the lady came in to try to break my water, and she ended up stripping my membranes, like, and I was bleeding, and like, I mean, it was just a really terrible, terrible, terrible experience. And I told myself that I would never, ever, ever let anybody convince me to do an induction ever again. It was just a very traumatic birth. But Caleb, okay, sorry, I had to break up some rough housing. So Caleb's birth was just kind of really traumatic for me. It wound up being almost a 13-hour birth. I did wind up getting an epidural, because after she came in the room and stripped my membranes, and I was bleeding, and I was just like crying, and I was really upset, and I knew enough to know how upset I was and how stressed I was that my body was going to do the opposite of what it needed to, and I didn't want to go into a C-section. So I went ahead and got the epidural. Once I got the epidural, he was born within the next hour because I just relaxed. But my birth with him was so long because I was so uncomfortable. I had a really great nurse who I'm like friends on Facebook with and everything, and she's great. And I probably would not have made it through Caleb's birth experience without her. Joshua, he had a really fast and furious birth. He was my first natural birth. I actually did a midwives brew to see if it would put me into labor on my own, because I had never been into labor on my own. I drank the midwives brew, went to sleep in like 3 or 4 hours. I woke up with like really intense contractions, and we were living with my mom at the time because the house was being worked on. And I had him within 3 hours. So nothing too cool except for Caleb's birth. Okay, so another question that I had was, what does Braxton do for work? So Braxton currently is a CDL driver. He works for, it's technically a fertilizer company. They do farming and fertilizing, and they sell fertilizer to other farmers, but they also do their own farming. And so he hauls grain all year round, and drives a semi truck. Sometimes he's driving what they call a tender truck, where he's hauling fertilizer to their fields. He basically just drives and does whatever they ask him to do for the day. It's really great. It's a really great company. He's had a couple of different job changes over the last year, but this was the type of situation that he was looking for. This is a company that it's small. They treat him really well. They treat our family really well. And he feels really confident that he's going to be able to retire from here, you know, in 20 years or whatever. And so we really love it. We're really blessed by it. We're really thankful that he found this company, because like I said, they've just been very good to us. He was previously working at a landscape company who wanted a CDL driver. He was made to believe that he was going to be driving a lot more, but he wasn't. He was actually doing a lot of really hard manual labor, which he doesn't mind doing, but he does have spinal injuries from the military that are part of the reason why he's technically medically retired. And so it was just really hard on his body and his back. And it wasn't a good long-term fit. And so yeah, we're just really blessed for where he's at right now. So we have, you know, 2 streams of income. We have a pension that comes in monthly from the military, because Braxton is technically 90% disabled, combat disabled. There's a lot of people are like, well, you shouldn't be able to work. Well, there's a difference in military pensions. You can be considered workable or non-workable. Braxton was not classified as not workable. We know somebody who they're 100%, like they're considered 100%. We know some people who are considered 70 or 90%, and they're classified as non-workable, meaning that if the government finds out that they're, you know, being taxed on income and they're working a certain, like there's a threshold, that they'll actually threaten to take your pension away. But Braxton is not in that situation. He's 90% permanent and total is what it's considered, meaning that he doesn't get his disability reevaluated every year like he did at one point in time. And so for a long time that was our main source of income, and then his GI Bill when he was going to school. But now he has his full-time job and we have our pension, which he gets that pension for the rest of his life. If he dies, I get the pension. It's a blessing, because it's enough to where if Braxton did die like early or something like that, you know, our house is paid off. We don't have car loans and everything. I mean, it would be hard, but I would be able to live off of that pension and make ends meet. So that's what he does for work. Okay, another question that I had was, how does our family homeschool and what curriculum do we use? So, what curriculum we use is a good question that it has to be followed by how do we homeschool. There's lots of different methods and forms of homeschool. For a long time, I did what was called traditional homeschooling, which was where like I would just buy the box curriculum and we would kind of imitate, not necessarily imitate a school setting, but you know, you had the textbooks and the workbooks and you did your work. We've been homeschooling, we're going into our 8th year of homeschooling because Emilynn will be in 9th grade this next school year, and we pulled her out after 1st grade. So she did kindergarten and 1st grade, and she's been homeschooled ever since. Several years into our homeschooling journey, I'd say probably like 3 years ago, I started learning more about like Charlotte Mason and classical education. And I really love to do kind of a mesh of those two. I'm not really the type of person that my personality, I can sit down for a tea time every day, or, you know, let's go sit in the meadow and do read alouds. I mean, I love the thought of it, but it's just not my personality. And so I try to find ways that I can implement Charlotte Mason and her philosophies, as well as like a classical approach. I very much expect my children to get a good quality education, but I do not like drill them. Like, we don't do a lot of tests, we don't do a lot of like, you know, I'm sitting them down at the table and I'm drilling them on facts and quizzes and everything like that. I want to, if I could really put into a statement of the way that I like to homeschool is that I am trying to raise lovers of learning. I want my children to never stop learning. I believe that there are a lot of people who cannot receive new information because they were just taught that, you know, you go to public school and then maybe you go to college and then that's it. You shut the head and then you just go to work. I want my children to always have an open, you know, imagine like opening your head and being able to receive information and learn. That's really what we're passionate about. So that's kind of why, to say what kind of curriculum do I use, if you would have asked me 8 years ago, I would have told you, oh, we do all BJU. You know, for several years we did do all BJU press, and we did like the distance learning, and I still will utilize BJU press. I currently have kids who are doing BJU press distance learning online classes. I love, this is something that I do not compromise on. You can, okay, so, sorry, Josh. Emilynn's in my room doing school where my baby monitor is, and she heard Josh wake up. So, okay, I was talking about BJU. So, with readers, I always do the BJU phonics reading and writing program for kindergarten and 1st grade. I believe I have 2 good, strong readers from the program. I believe it's worth the investment because it is an investment. It's more expensive for kindergarten. It's cheaper for 1st grade. But especially if you have multiple kids, I mean, it's just a great program. So I always do that for kindergarten and 1st grade. And then I kind of go into like, if by the end of 1st grade, I don't have a super strong reader, which I haven't had this happen. I wondered if I was going to have it happen with Lucas, but he's actually a really good, strong reader. If by the end of 1st grade BJU phonics reading and writing program, they weren't doing well, I would have them continue into 2nd grade until they really got that confidence with reading, because reading is like an extremely important skill. I don't think you can do much without it. And so, and boys tend to be later readers, so, but Lucas has done great. And so he will not be doing BJU next year. And so when I'm in seasons, like I have a new baby, or when we were moving, or like whatever, and I need to be a little more hands off with school, and I have to be realistic about my time and everything, I will pull in BJU distance learning. That is always like my secret in my back pocket. Other than that, we kind of just do a hodgepodge of piecing together what works based on each child, what we want to do for that year. We love master books. We love knot grass. We love, we've done some apologia. I'm not a super big fan of apologia, honestly. I've tried it a couple of times and just, my kids just don't like it. It's kind of dry. And I know that there's ways that you can like make it more interesting and stuff, but I'm looking at my bookshelves to list off curriculum. We've done rod and staff in the past. I've already mentioned master books. We've utilized wisdom booklets too. That was the curriculum that like the Duggars and the Bates used. We have like wisdom booklets from that that we will utilize. A lot of times we'll do that for like a family, like we'll get together around the table and we'll do that as like a family discipleship time together, not something that they do individually. Let's see. Really like stuff from like Vision Form before Vision Form broke apart. We've got a lot of stuff for that. So we kind of just piece together what works for the kids. So Emilynn is actually in an online private school this year called Logos, and we're not going to do that again next year. It just wasn't what we hoped it was going to be, and Emilynn doesn't really want to keep going, and so for 9th grade she's going to be back with me full-time, because currently she does Zoom classes from like 9 a.m. to 1, and it's very rigid and there's not a lot of wiggle room for us to like do other things. And that's like kind of like my big thing about homeschooling is like I like to be able to wake up and say the house is really bad and it's a mess and we really need to clean up today, and just take the day off school. And that's why I year-round homeschool, is because instead of having like really strict rigid breaks, I'm able to take a day off when I need to and we still finish the year out. So I'm going to try to do more homeschool content this year. Drop in the comments what you would like to see in regards to homeschool content. So let's see, first stories. Caleb update. That was the last question, and then I will tell you guys my big announcement. So a Caleb update. It's been a journey this year with Caleb. I mean, we have been to specialists, we've been to nutritionists, we've been to all sorts of things. Within the last 5 months, we started working with a functional nutritionist. We did like a $500 GI 360 test that like examined his stool and told us like exactly what was going on with his tummy and like everything that he needed to do. And like you guys have saw in my grocery hauls, like we started being really particular about what we were buying. I mean, our grocery budget skyrocketed, but we were like, this is for Caleb's health. Like, this is what is important. Nothing was changing. I mean, he was on these supplements, he was on probiotics, he was on all these things, and we were seeing no change. He was still having like the tummy issues when he went to the bathroom, and like just nothing was really improving. And I got really frustrated because I'm like, man, I am working so hard. We're seeing no weight change. I mean, because honestly, the weight isn't as big of a concern for me, because I know that, first of all, he's in the 99+ percentile for his height. I'm 5 foot tall. Braxton's 5'3". I don't know where he got that from. He has always been my biggest baby. He was almost 8 pounds at birth, and my other kids are like 6 pounds. Like, he's just always been my biggest kid. And so we put him in preschool, and I would pack his breakfast every morning, and we would send him to school. And I got really frustrated with the school because I asked the speech language pathologist to please, you know, like give me a weekly report on what is Caleb working on, what does he need to be working on at home, how we can be supporting him at home with his speech, and I was getting nothing. And so I had to drive 20 minutes to the school, and he would be there for 2 hours, and then I had to drive 20 minutes to go pick him up. And so there was actually one morning where I went and I dropped him off at school, and I literally got halfway home, and Braxton called me and said, they said Caleb's coughing and he's not covering his mouth and he has to go home. And if he doesn't go home, they're gonna put a mask on him. And I was like, I was just over it at that point. I was like, are you kidding? Like, he's 3. Like, it's the beginning of fall / winter. Like, he probably just needs a drink of water. Like, he probably just got a dry throat or whatever. And like, so I went and picked him up, and they told me that he couldn't return until his cough left. I was just like, what? And so I got really frustrated, and I called Braxton, and I was just almost in tears. And I wound up finding a private speech therapist who could take him in immediately. I pulled him out of preschool. It would have been in November. I pulled him out of preschool, and he's been back home with us. And I have seen more progress in the 3 or 4 weeks that he's been in private speech therapy than I saw in the 3 months that he was at school. And while I don't really have a lot of updates about what I need to do as far as Caleb's like stomach problems, I'm still figuring that out. I'm still trying to make my decisions about what I'm gonna do. My nutritionist kind of dropped off the face of the planet, and I was supposed to have an appointment with her. She asked me to reschedule, and then she's never contacted me again. And I'm kind of being stubborn because I've spent a lot of money on this, and I feel like she, as the provider, should reach out to me. And so I think I'm just gonna come up with my own plan of what I was originally gonna do, which is basically follow like Nourishing Traditions book and just do natural healing foods, and just do the best I can with his diet. But as far as his speech delay goes, we are very certain that he has childhood apraxia of speech. And so it's a little more complicated than just a speech delay. It's something that we're gonna probably have to work on with him for years. He has been doing a really great job with his speech therapist. They have not officially diagnosed him yet because they're just trying to be really thorough. I mean, there's going to come a point in time where we need the diagnosis for insurance to continue to cover his speech therapy and everything like that. But we've made really good leaps and bounds with him as far as speech. He's doing so well with that. He's also doing, you know, occupational therapy to like help with some fine motor skills that he needs help with. We're actually going today to get him a physical therapy evaluation because his feet are pretty flat and it's really hard to find shoes for him. And so we're going to get him evaluated for that to see if maybe they can help me find shoes for him that will help better his mobility. I have not noticed him gain weight. We weigh him pretty frequently. If anything, I've actually noticed him kind of thin out because he's had a little bit of a growth spurt. And so I'm not noticing him getting really bloated in the tummy anymore. And so it's still going. There's some days where I just cry because I feel like he has so many things in his life at one time, and he just keeps going, and he sometimes has his tantrums and everything, but for the most part he just keeps going. And we're really glad to have him back home all the time with us because I didn't like him being gone. And so, you know, we're going to speech therapy twice a week, and then I'm working with him every day at home, and then, you know, he's just we're just doing what we can for him. I wouldn't say that I think that I'm like, I was actually talking to Braxton about this morning. I don't feel like I'm at the point where I was several months ago, where I felt really in desperation of trying to get things figured out with him. I think we're in a good place. I think we're moving in a good direction. And I'm happy. I'm happy overall. Would I like to see more progress quicker? Yes, but we're just taking it one day at a time. So with that being said, to touch back on an earlier question that we had, which was, are we having another baby? And the answer is yes. I am almost 15 weeks currently, and we have not announced it for a long time for a couple of reasons. We had 2 back-to-back miscarriages. We had a chemical pregnancy, which means that it was a miscarriage before 5 weeks. 3 months ago, and then in August we had like a full miscarriage. And then so I miscarried actually the day before Caleb's birthday. And I shared about that, and exactly 4 weeks later we found out that we were pregnant with this baby, and we had just decided we really wanted to wait to say anything because reoccurrent loss is really hard. And a lot of times people will say things, you know, like, well, you already have a ton of kids, you know, you weren't trying, you know, they say these things, and it's like, that was a person, that was a part of me that I loved, no matter how tiny they were, and now they're gone. And so we wanted to kind of just wait. We had our first ultrasound where we found heartbeat and everything, and then we've actually had 2 ultrasounds where we saw heartbeat. And then I'm actually going to a birth center here locally. I'm not going to have a hospital birth. So the birth center, basically I'll give birth there and I get to go home 3 hours later, which I wanted to do a home birth, but home births here are like $5,000, and no. And the birth center is covered by my insurance, and so we're gonna give birth there. And so I had an appointment 2 or 3 weeks ago. They couldn't pull me up on the Doppler, which isn't concerning. Typically, I can't pull on a Doppler until 16, 17, sometimes even 18 weeks. And so they pulled out like a handheld ultrasound, and Braxton actually got to be there with me, and so we got to see the baby like wiggling around, and we could see their heart fluttering and everything. And so that's been great. I actually have a doctor's appointment next week to go and get checked out for my 16-week appointment. We are not finding out the gender of the baby. We are going to be surprised. Braxton has always wanted to do that. I never have. And after having back-to-back losses, I just felt like I wanted to give him something for carrying me through. You know, I mean, obviously we were both grieving and everything, but just physically carrying me through, you know, when I wasn't feeling well and everything like that. I had a really hard first trimester. It's part of why I took a month off of YouTube. I was really struggling with exhaustion and nausea terribly. Like probably one of my worst first trimesters that I can remember. I'm feeling better. My exhaustion's better. My nausea's pretty much gone. Although as I'm older, and this is my technically 8th pregnancy, but 6th baby, I definitely feel it a lot sooner. So it's baby is due in June, and we're really excited. So with that being said, guys, thanks for being patient with me. Thanks for hanging out with me this afternoon. I've actually got to get Caleb ready to take him to that physical therapy evaluation. And so I just want to say thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for all your questions. Thanks for always being there. And I look forward to doing another one of these sometime soon. If you're not following me on Instagram, I'll put my handle down below. And I will talk to you guys next time.